Here's a question that keeps me up at night. I want you to do something simple. Go ahead, do it. Try to remember what you ate exactly 1 week ago, at this exact time. Not the vague idea, not probably a sandwich. I mean the taste, the order of bites, the conversation, the light in the room. Really try. Now, here's the disturbing part. You lived that moment. Your eyes saw it. Your ears heard it. Your body was there. And yet for most of your life, your own experience is gone, like it never happened. So what is yourself if the movie of your life keeps getting erased? And here's the strange twist. Forgetting isn't just a bug. It's not your brain being bad at storage. In many ways, forgetting is your brain doing its job properly. Selecting, compressing, rewriting. But wait, if that's true, then the thing you call memory isn't a recording at all. It's a reconstruction. It's a story your brain tells you, updated every time you remember it. That should bother you a little because it means the past you feel so sure about might be negotiable. This will blow your mind by the end. Some memories don't fade because they're weak, but because remembering them would make you less functional, less stable, less you. And the statistics are already pointing at it. Even in classic lab work on forgetting, memory loss is fast at first and then slows, like a steep cliff that turns into a long slope. That basic shape shows up again and again in how humans retain information over time. So let me tell you what's really going on, because once you see it, you won't look at your own identity the same way again. Let me tell you something that will change how you see forgetting. You know that moment when you walk into a room and you suddenly stop because you can't remember why you came in? You stand there staring at nothing, like the room wiped your mind clean. And you laugh and you blame stress or getting older, or maybe you say, my brain is full. But here's the thing. That tiny glitch is a miniature version of what's happening to your entire life, all the time. You're forgetting right now, not old memories, not childhood. You're forgetting this morning. You're forgetting details from last week. You're forgetting whole people you once knew, names, faces, feelings, whole chapters. And you don't notice it, because the forgetting itself removes the evidence. That's why it feels so eerie when you suddenly do notice it. You see a photo and think, wait, when did that happen? You hear a song and realize you can't reconstruct the year you played it on repeat. You find a message you wrote and you think, did I really feel that way? Now some of you might be thinking, sure, but I remember the important stuff. Do you? Because there's a second disturbing question hiding under the first one. If your memory is selective, then who is doing the selecting? Is it you? Or is it a machine inside your skull that edits the film of your life without your permission? And if it's editing, what else is changing? We can already prove that memory isn't a faithful replay. In classic research on the misinformation effect, the words used in a question can change what people later report seeing, sometimes even creating details that weren't there. That's not a philosophical claim. That's an experimental result. So yes, this is going to get personal, because we're not just talking about forgetting facts. We're talking about the relationship between memory and the self. By the end, you'll understand why forgetting is built into the physics of how brains work, why your brain can't keep everything, and why the you feel inside your head is, in a very real sense, a moving target. Let me pause here. If that makes you slightly uncomfortable, good. That means you're paying attention. Most people think memory works like a camera. You experience something, the brain stores it, later you retrieve it, like pulling a file from a cabinet, like opening a photo album. And because that's the intuitive story, you might think forgetting is just the cabinet being messy, a bad filing system, or the file decaying. But here's the thing. The brain is not a cabinet. A cabinet is designed to store things. A brain is designed to survive. And survival is not the same problem as truth. Let's start with what people think is true. You store an event. Time passes. The memory fades. The fading is failure. Now here's where the scientific mystery walks in and says, excuse me, that story doesn't make sense. Because if forgetting were just damage or rot, you'd expect it to be mostly random, like a book left out in the rain. Pages smear unpredictably, but forgetting has patterns. For over a century, experiments have shown that memory drops fast soon after learning, then levels off, what people often call the forgetting curve. It's not a straight line, it's a cliff, and then a long tail. That's weird. Why should your brain forget half of something quickly, then hold a smaller fraction for much longer? That doesn't sound like damage. It sounds like a system with rules. And here's the first, wait, that doesn't make sense moment. If your brain is trying to keep you alive, Why would it throw away information you might need later? But here's the thing. It's not throwing away information, it's throwing away unhelpful detail and keeping useful structure. Let me give you an everyday metaphor. Imagine your brain is like a kitchen. Every day you cook, every day you make a mess. Now you could decide, I'm going to preserve every crumb exactly where it landed because it's part of the history of my cooking. That would be insane. A working kitchen needs cleaning, it needs clearing, it needs space, and it needs a system. You keep the knife, you toss the wrapper, you don't keep every eggshell as a sacred artifact. Forgetting is the cleaning crew. Now you might think, okay, but I want the cleaning crew to stop throwing away my life. Fair, but you don't get to have an infinite kitchen. Your brain runs on biology. It runs on energy. It's not a magical cloud server. Even the raw numbers are staggering. A human brain contains on the order of tens of billions of neurons and a truly absurd number of connections between them. Trillions of synaptic links. Synapses are the tiny junctions where neurons pass signals. That's not a poetic many. That's a number that should make you dizzy. And here's the reversal. You might think more connections means store everything, but actually more connections means more interference, more ways one memory can collide with another. Now let's introduce a few scientific terms, and I'll define them right away. First, working memory, the small mental workspace where you hold a phone number long enough to dial it. It's fragile and short-lived. Second, hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain that's crucial for forming certain new long-term memories. Third, consolidation, the process of stabilizing a memory over time, turning a fragile pattern into a more durable one. Those three terms will be our tools. And here's the paradox. Sometimes the hippocampus can be damaged, and people can still hold a conversation normally, yet they can't form new long-term memories in the usual way. That isn't a hypothetical. It's one of the most famous cases in neuroscience, patient HM, studied by surgeons and scientists including William Scoville and Brenda Milner, which helped reveal that memory functions are organized and separable in the brain. So memory isn't one thing, it's a set of systems. But wait, there's more to this story. Because even if you understand that memory is biological, you still haven't answered the big question. Why does it feel like you have a stable self when the evidence of your life keeps dissolving? Let me take you deeper. Layer 1. Let me explain this the way I'd explain it to a bright 12-year-old. Imagine your brain is not a library. It's a city. In a library, books sit still on shelves. In a city, everything is moving. Cars move, people move, supplies move, garbage gets picked up, roads get repaired. If the city tried to preserve every footprint, it would stop being a city. Memory is made in a moving system. At the microscopic level, one of the key places memory lives is the synapse, that junction where neurons communicate. You can think of synapses like adjustable knobs. If two neurons communicate often, the connection can become stronger or easier to activate later. That general idea is called synaptic plasticity. Plasticity just means changeable. Now here's a thought experiment. Suppose your brain really did record everything perfectly. Every face you pass on the street, every word in every meeting, every notification sound, every awkward glance, every product label in every grocery aisle. How long before you'd become useless? You wouldn't be a person. You'd be a surveillance archive with legs. So the brain compresses. A good analogy is a movie file. A raw video is enormous, so we compress it. We don't store every pixel of every frame. We store patterns and differences, what changes from frame to frame. Memory works more like that than you think. You don't remember your childhood bedroom by storing every photon that hit your eyes. You remember a model, where the bed was, what the window felt like, the general smell, the emotional tone. Then your brain reconstructs it when you remember. Now some of you might be thinking, okay, but why does it feel so real? Because reconstruction happens fast, and you experience the reconstruction as if it were playback. Here's the kicker. The act of remembering isn't like pulling a photograph from a drawer. It's like rebuilding a scene from scattered parts, like setting up a stage play in your mind. And that brings us to the first big mechanism of forgetting, interference. Interference means memories compete. New learning can disrupt old patterns, and old patterns can make new learning harder. If you've ever struggled to remember a new password because your fingers keep typing the old one, you've felt interference in your bones. Now, let me pause here. Do you see why forgetting might be inevitable in a system like this? It's not your brain is failing. It's that your brain is a living, changing network. And yet, if memory is reconstruction, then forgetting is not just erasing, it's a kind of editing. So what is the editor optimizing for? That's where we add layer 2. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the brain doesn't only decide keep or discard based on repetition. It also uses emotion, sleep, and meaning. Let's talk about emotion first. There's a structure called the amygdala. You can think of it as a threat and salience detector. It's deeply involved in emotional responses, and research has long suggested the amygdala can modulate how strongly memories consolidate, especially for emotionally arousing events. That's why you can forget what you ate last Tuesday, but you remember the one phone call that terrified you. It's not fair, it's not democratic, but it's efficient for survival. Now let's bring in sleep. You might think sleep is shutdown time, like putting your phone on the charger. But actually, sleep is a biological workshop. During sleep, the brain replays patterns of activity, like practicing the day again. Classic work in animals recorded hippocampal activity and found patterns re-expressed during sleep consistent with theories of consolidation science. So the hippocampus is not just a storage box, it's more like a temporary sketch pad, helping the brain train itself. Now, here's something even stranger. Remembering can make a memory unstable again. This is where we introduce reconsolidation, the idea that when you retrieve a memory, it can become temporarily malleable and then must be saved again. In famous work on fear memory, researchers showed that after retrieval, blocking protein synthesis in certain brain regions could disrupt the memory's later expression, supporting the idea that retrieval can open a window of vulnerability. Think about what that implies. If each act of remembering is also an act of rewriting, then your memory is less like a diary and more like a Wikipedia page that you keep editing, sometimes without noticing. Now, some of you might be thinking, so my memories are unreliable? Yes, if by reliable you mean verbatim recording. But if by reliable you mean good enough to guide your next decision, then your memory is astonishingly effective. And now we have to face a common misconception. A lot of people believe, if I remember it vividly, it must be true. That is wrong. Here's why. Experiments on eyewitness testimony show that wording can shift what people report and can even lead people to report details that weren't present. Simply psychology. Vividness is not a truth meter. It's often an emotion meter. So forgetting isn't the only issue. Distortion is the twin shadow of memory. And that leads us to layer 3, the existential part. But wait, there's more to this story. If memory is reconstruction and reconstruction is rewriting, then the self is not a fixed object. It's a process. You feel like you are the same person across years because your brain maintains continuity, like a river that keeps its name even though the water changes every second. Think about it. If you replaced every molecule in a candle over time, would it be the same candle? You'd probably say yes, because the pattern matters more than the atoms. Yourself is a pattern. This is not poetry. This is fact. And the cosmic comparison is almost insulting in its scale. The universe is billions of years old, filled with stars, and here you are, an arrangement of matter on one small planet, trying to keep a coherent story inside a 3-pound organ. A memory is not a thing. It's a recreated firing pattern across neurons. And now we can see 3 competing stories about why you forget. Theory 1, resource optimization. Forgetting frees capacity, reduces interference, and keeps you flexible. Your brain keeps what predicts the future, not what preserves the past. Theory 2, emotional regulation. Forgetting or dampening can protect you. If every painful moment remained sharp forever, you might not function. Emotional systems modulate consolidation and recall. Theory 3. Memory is updating. Forgetting is not deletion but revision. Your memory integrates new information when it's reactivated, which can explain both learning and distortion. The very fact that post-event information can reshape recall points to this updating nature. Now here's the honest part, the part science earns its credibility with. We still don't fully know how a subjective sense of identity emerges from these mechanisms. We can point to circuits, we can measure activity, we can disrupt memory formation in striking ways, as in the case of HM, revealing that memory systems are dissociable. But the felt sense of I am the same me, that's not located like a kidney is located. It's a stability your brain generates. And if that stability depends on selective memory, then forgetting is not the enemy of the self. Forgetting is part of the construction of the self. Let that sit for a second, because that means the most important you isn't stored in perfect detail. It's stored as a living, adaptable pattern, always being tuned. Now wait, if that's true, then the question becomes, what should you want from memory? Perfect recall or a coherent life? Let's zoom back down to human scale. When I look at my own memories, I notice something quietly heartbreaking. I remember a handful of highlight reels, first days, last days, embarrassing moments, victories, losses. But most of the ordinary days, the ones that actually made up my life, are gone. And if you're between 25 and 45, you already feel this speeding up. You're not a kid anymore where summers feel infinite. Years start folding in on themselves. You blink and it's been 5 years. You scroll through photos and realize you've forgotten entire trips. So here's the unity moment, and I want you to really hear it. You are not separate from this. You are not a self trapped inside a brain that is malfunctioning. You are the living process of remembering and forgetting. That's why it feels personal, because it is personal. Let me give you a small, practical observation. If you've ever tried to learn something serious, like a language or calculus or a new technical skill, you felt the forgetting curve as an emotional experience. You study, you feel smart, you sleep, and the next day it's slippery again. That basic shape, fast forgetting early, then slower loss, shows up in experimental work, and the temptation is to interpret it as a moral failure. I'm lazy. I'm not talented. My brain is broken. But what if it's simply biology? What if forgetting is the price of being a flexible creature, not a static archive? Now here's the poetic passage, just a few sentences, and then we'll come back to science. Your life is not stored like a treasure chest buried underground. It's more like a campfire you keep alive by rearranging the wood. The flame looks continuous, but the fuel is always changing. And that means something else. It means nostalgia. This ache you feel when you remember who you used to be is not just longing for the past. It's longing for a version of you that existed when your narrative felt simpler. Past, present, future. In the past, memory feels like accumulation. You're becoming someone. In the present, memory feels like maintenance. You're trying not to lose yourself. In the future, memory becomes legacy. What remains when you can't hold it all? And that's where existential anxiety sneaks in. Because if you forget so much, what's the meaning of all those days? But here's the thing. Meaning doesn't require perfect recall. Meaning requires patterns, relationships, commitments, values, and the direction your life bends over time. Your brain forgets details so you can keep the direction. Now let's turn that into empowerment. So what does this mean for you? It means the disturbing part, that you forget almost everything, is also the beautiful part. Because forgetting is not only loss, it's also space. Space to change your mind. Space to heal, space to learn new things without being trapped by old patterns. This is the most remarkable thing about memory. It's not designed to preserve the past, it's designed to help you adapt. So here are practical takeaways, small, real, usable shifts. First, respect the curve. If forgetting is steep early, then you need early reinforcement. Don't reread once, revisit multiple times over days. The basic fast drop then leveling pattern is exactly why spacing works. Second, attach meaning, not volume. If you learn 10 facts with no structure, they interfere and vanish. If you learn 2 principles that explain 10 facts, you keep them longer. This is the difference between memorizing and understanding. Third, use emotion ethically. Emotional arousal can strengthen consolidation pathways. So don't just try to study more. Make learning matter. Teach it, apply it, connect it to your work, your identity, your goals. Fourth, sleep is part of the job. Sleep isn't a luxury add-on. Evidence from hippocampal replay studies supports the idea that sleep is involved in reprocessing and consolidation. Fifth, be humble about certainty. Because memory is reconstructive, confidence can exceed accuracy. Leading questions can reshape recall. So when you're arguing with someone you love, remember, you're both likely holding edited versions. And yet, none of this should make you cynical. It should make you careful, compassionate, and oddly relieved, because you don't need to remember everything to be real. You need to remember what you're building. Let's take stock of where we started and where we are now. We started with a simple, everyday failure. You can't remember what you did, what you felt, what you lived. Then we saw the strange truth. Memory isn't a recording, it's reconstruction. We walked through the machinery, working memory, the hippocampus, consolidation, emotion, sleep, and the unsettling idea that remembering can rewrite what you remember, and we ended somewhere quieter. Forgetting isn't just loss, it's part of what makes a self possible. Now I have a question for you, and I want it personal and specific. What's one memory you're sure is true, but you've never actually verified with anyone else? Leave your answer in the comments and tell me what makes you so certain. Because if we're going to be honest about being human, we should be honest about how strange it is that we have a past at all. Thank you for thinking about this with me.